Welcome back, Time Crunch fans. I'm your host, Coach Adam Pulford. If you're listening to this podcast, you're likely an athlete. Some of you are new to the sport of cycling, while some of you have been athletes your whole life, picking up the sport of cycling later on in life. Still, some of you have been riding and racing since you were juniors and have seen the sport, as well as your participation in sport, change over time. My guest today is much like the latter. Caroline Manny is 5-time cyclocross French National Champion, silver medalist at the 2016 Cyclocross World Championships, and she's the 2021 and 2022 USCX Series champion for the elite women. She also has multiple podiums, anything from cyclocross to mountain biking on the World Cup level, and she's had a long, illustrious career. She had her ups and downs, though, in the sport as well as life. And how one person navigates their ups and downs is unique to themselves. However, I'm a firm believer that sharing our stories together can help us navigate similar challenges together. Everyone listening here is not a world-class athlete like Caroline, but that doesn't matter because the story of redefining oneself is something that can resonate with just about anybody. Plus, you'll find Caroline is just as human as yourself. I suppose I should just introduce her at this point. So, Caroline, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam.
Hey,
hi, everybody. I'm good.
I just saw you at Charm City this past weekend, and the long drive back is gruesome as you're racing and recovering weekend to weekend. So, how are you feeling?
Do you want the honest opinion? I'm wrecked. So I'm like, damn, I have to travel again tomorrow. Lucky enough, I went home for a few days, but I am not recovered, but it's all good. We're going to do it again this weekend.
Waterloo this weekend?
Yep. Recovery is not a word that I have in my vocabulary these days, so it's all good.
Fair enough. Before we kind of get into that and get into why recovery is lacking in your life these days too, I want to frame this conversation up a little bit more by because we're going to talk about how you redefine yourself in sport, okay, with you. And the audience, sure, they can look you up. I just read a lot of your results, but give us the Cliff's Notes version of how you started competing at a young age, like what you were doing, because it wasn't always just a bicycle, to where you're at now. Kind of rip through a little bit, and we'll then kind of go into how you navigated it, but then also where you're at right now.
Yeah, pretty simple. I think a lot of people don't know that, but I didn't start riding bike pretty early. I was 17 years old. I actually was competing tennis. I actually did ballet. People would not believe that I did six years of ballet, and I raced motocross for a long time. And I crashed really bad, injured myself, broke my back, almost got paralyzed when I was 15 years old. And as a recovery, people were like, hey, you should ride a bike. So I just got on a bike and ended up being good at it. I was like, you know what? I'll do something I'm good at it. That sounds like a good plan. I never thought, hey, I want to be a bike racer, and just life happened. I ended up on the bike, and then 20 something years later, I'm still racing. So that's a short recap. Yeah.
That's a short recap. Well, let's start a little bit of the cycling journey from when you were winning a lot of your national championships, both in cyclocross and ripping on the mountain bike too. And I think too that motocross background. I mean, I think you started racing in motocross when you were like 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty young. Yeah. I compete since I'm 6. It doesn't matter what I do. It's like, It seems like I like to either have a number or, a start time and finish time, pretty much.
Exactly. And it's really important too, again, in terms of this, like the arc of Caroline Manny and what we're talking about here. So let's go to that, when you're winning a lot, okay, that kind of that 2016 time frame, when it's all good, I think. But what was your motivation? What drove you then? Was it smooth sailing, or was it still like you had some choppy waters?
I mean, there was a lot of good years. I think like the best year, we're going to say it's 16 because I got medal at Worlds, but I also had 2009 where I'm U23 and leading the World Cup, in mountain bike. There's a lot of good years, but yes, if you think it, you say, hey, 1 year for Caroline is 2016, but actually It's funny because a lot of people don't know that. It was probably the worst time of my life in some ways. I used what I was struggling in my personal life to be strong on the bike. I was in a really abusive marriage at that time, and I was able to maintain. I got into the marriage fast, and then I got out of the marriage not that fast. Let's put it that way. So I think I was in the transition where if I could go back in time, the last few years, the years after 2016 would have been different because I was mentally and physically drained. So I think I was using a lot of personal stuff to be motivated. And when I started racing a bike, I was like, I want to be national champion. That was one of my goals. And then I got national champion. I was like, well, I want a European championship podium and I want world championship podium. So you like keep going and going and you keep adding goals. And I accomplished my goal. Well, I failed by 12 seconds, but second place is not too bad.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I think with athletes too, because I didn't know the exact timeline of some of that craziness, but I think my observation of working with athletes is when you're going good, it's like that flow mode. Everything's in sync. Everything's like ripping and going. Other times it's like things can be, you can be winning and they look like they're going good, but oftentimes that is driven by something darker, right? Like life is crazy. So I'm gonna be kind of that athlete mode of I'm gonna overcome. I'm gonna crush that challenge. I'm gonna use that pain to drive me forward. So that was like the 2016-ish time frame for you.
Yeah, I think it's if you think about like all professional athletes like high level, I always say we all messed up in the head in some ways because we use some like really dark thing to like get the strengths out of it. So like
Mhm.
I think a lot of people who are not athletes, they're just like if there is a hard time, they're just gonna, settle, sit with it. And as an athlete, you don't have a choice. You can't just go through it the same way. You have to be like, what can I do? How can I use that? Because it is really painful to have bad days. And I always said to all my athletes, is like, hey, you're gonna have more bad days than good days. Like there's just few athletes in the world where they can say, hey, I have more good days than bad days. But I always say, hey, if you have good bad days, you also get to enjoy the good one better because you actually know how difficult those bad days can be. But yeah, 16 was rough. I met my ex-wife in like end of 15 where I was starting to be really fast and then focusing on like waltz and then bad marriage, abuse, cops involved, all the things that you can't not, when you're not in there. 10 years ago, I was like, gosh, that does not happen to any athlete. There's no things like that. This is not a abuse. It's just like TV and then other people. This is not my circle. That cannot be a thing. But yes, that was a thing. And for a long time, I did not talk about it. And, 8 years later, I'm willing to share because I'm sure there's other people who are in a situation like I was. And hopefully they get more help than I did because I just hide and then I use it to be faster on the bike. And then I completely crashed after that, pretty much, and lost my contract because of behavior and not being myself. So, yes, good time and bad time came right after.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's super important. And there's certainly applicability to both, athlete life and non-athlete life too, because even if you were, uh, continued winning, I would say at some point, like that pain, the what drove you, it's going to end in a bad way. And like you said, it ended up being, kind of bad decisions. It all kind of came crashing down. Right.
Yeah,
And
we're not machine. I think like the problem is like a lot of people are like, those athletes, they're machine. We're
right.
humans. At the end, we have the same life than everybody else. It's just
For
like
sure.
we compete and like I always joke and say, hey, we all like bikes, and the only difference is like I may have more resume if you Google my name on the Wikipedia, but pretty much the same. We all do the same things that we want to ride a bike. It's just different goals, different perspective, but we all humans, so we have to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I think too is like the athlete, we typically will grab the bull by the horns, overcome things, try to push through. And I gone through some shit in my life too. And I've tried that. It didn't work out too well. And for me, it was I don't know if this was like similar to you as well, but it's like I almost had to let go of that, let go of like the athlete way for a while before it could like come back to me, because there was just like stuff that I was trying to navigate that I couldn't push through. I couldn't like force it, right? And you learn to let go in that way, and you're like, whoa, the world's changing. And it's a very, for me, it was just a very different athlete context. I don't know if it was similar like that when you were just like at the bottom of the barrel for yourself.
Yeah, it's just like you have to sit with everything for a moment, and I think
Hmm.
like the issue is
Athletes are
in
good
my
at sitting.
in my case, you tell me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it whatever I can to tell
Yeah.
you I can. Like you're
Yeah.
wrong. So I always say, wait, we're kind of stupid and stubborn at the same time because we just destroy her body in some ways because like that mental, it's like this mental pushing so hard and then like not feeling and not getting the help you need and
Yeah.
having to like focus on what's the problem and just cover it up. So like cycling feel like it's been a cover up for a long time and
Hmm.
it has changed. Like it used to be my escape. It's still an escape. We all have jobs and
Yeah.
things, and then it's like what you want to do, but it's a different escape. So I'm really defining that in a different ways and like living life and using cycling in a different way that it used to be like 8 years ago. And trying to be a little less exhausting. That's the goal.
Yeah. No, it's super healthy. It's super healthy. I had a friend that used to say, eh, you're just hiding behind the bars. When you're,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You're putting in the miles. You're just going for it. Just you're hiding, you
yeah. The
know,
bars are getting narrow, so you can't hide as much as you used
can't
to.
hide as much. That's so true. Um, so let's talk about that. Like when you started to have bad seasons, right? You could like you were using the bike to kind of hide behind, but all of a sudden your performance started to plummet. Mentally, what started to shift? How did you navigate through that?
Gosh, I'm not sure. I sometimes I wonder how I ended up like staying in the sport. Like there's a lot of years I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
I remember going up this hill in Jingle Cross, one of the famous cyclocross race. I had a panic attack. So I just on the ground, sitting on my knees, not able to breathe because life was too much. Like the result, the performance, sacrifice. I can't do this anymore. So it's so weird how in the moment you just want to quit, you want to be done, and then you just keep going and they're like, wait until you get out of the hole. It's just like, I think one of the things that for a long time, I was never quitting. I would just push through anything. And sometimes it's okay to say stop. Like, there's no shame or weakness to be like, that's it. Like, this is not bringing me joy. This is not satisfying. I have to do something different or I have to pause. And I think if I could circle back, I would probably change a lot of things because I went through a lot of bad races, bad season, and then struggle with teams and then without contract, but I kept going. Honestly, I will have to reflect a little more because I still tried to figure out why and how I did through like keep going after that many years. But I can see that now it's changing. Like for example, this weekend I got third at Charm City, and then the
Mhm.
next day I'm like, I can't do this. My ankle is suffering, my foot is bad. I suffer through Saturday and I'm like, I can't do this. My body is not handling. I need to say stop. I would have never done that 8 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm learning different things and hopefully growing in some ways.
But yeah, I was going to bring that up. I was like, you go from the podium to DNF at Charm. So basically, and I don't think I would have seen that, back in the 2016 years. But you mentioned your ankle. What else went into the decision of like, "Ooh, this ain't worth it today"?
I don't know. It's just like I I hate to say that because it sounds like kind of that fire that you have in you when you're
Hmm.
like 25 and then when
Hmm.
you're 38, it doesn't ignite as quick or stay as long as it used to be. So there's a lot of things like I always say, people are like, are you pro? I'm like, dude, I have so many jobs. I have to count when people are asking me how many jobs I have. And I'm like, cycling is priority number 6, probably,
Yeah.
pretty close to that. And you think about, okay, I have a next race next weekend, and then I have to go to work on Monday. And if I injure more, I can probably not afford the bill in US because if I need to have surgery or something like that. So you think about all the consequences of what's going to happen if I kept going. In 14, I raced pretty much 6 weeks with a molded cast on my bike because I was like, I have to race, figure it out. So the doc molded a cast for me to be able to race. I'm not doing this these days. I'm just like, hey, I want my body. I don't want to not walk in 5 years. So I'm trying to be a little better. I want to say I'm being smarter, but I don't know. This is just me trying to convince myself I'm being smarter. But the body and the mind said, Caroline, this is it. Go
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. And I think it's important, worth noting too. I mean, when you're in your teens and 20s, the risk assessment, the risk calculation is a lot different than our latter 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, right? And that slides over time. And I think for our listeners who not know you as much as I do, another thing to mention is you're no longer just the professional bike racer anymore. Let's talk about your jobs right now, because you are a CTS coach, bike racer, and then you also tell us what else you're involved in.
So I have full-time job. So I'm actually US sales activation manager for Panelman Studio, who's a cycling clothes from Denmark. I also coach with CTS. That's kind of my passion, love job. We always have a job that we really love. So I have, I believe, 7 athletes. And we'll take more, but just like it's one of the jobs that I love. And then I do race professionally. I also run the team Groove Offroad Racing, so I'm the team manager of the team. And on top of that, this year I launched this project called Velomafia, who is actually race support for anyone. So you can sign up at cyclocross races, and I'm hoping that's going to pick up for other discipline. So any people, any teams, you just come and then we give you kind of like a little taste of the pro support. So yes, I need 48 hours in one day these days, but
That's it. And Caroline, like, and soft plug for the Velomafia, by the way, any cyclocross racers out there that are looking for some support, we'll have Caroline's contact info on our landing pages. You can look her up on social media, give her a DM there, and connect with her, and she'll be at the big races. But I think it's super important to realize that anybody who's done a big race, if you've gone solo and one time and then you had support the next time, whether it's your spouse or friends at aid stations or a mechanic or something like that, you come to a CTS bucket list event, you get that pro support, you realize like how much stress that takes away from you, and you can just ride and race your bike. When you're doing that and riding and racing your bike, like Caroline is talking about, I've done that for years, and I am so blown out at the end of those things. Like, I just
yeah,
want to crawl into a hole and die.
pretty much. But this is my way to give back in some ways.
Right.
So like to circle back, I was like, hey, this is redefining me and then the sport, and that's like also like I hate like I'm having some resentment these days about the age limitation. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're too old to do this and blah blah. I'm like, go to hell. Do whatever you want. It's like it's not because you're 45, 55, or 65 that you shouldn't try the cyclocross race. Like it's like you should be your own limitation. It shouldn't be like, hey, you know what? Because you're that age, we're not giving you a chance. And I see it myself like I'm not getting a contract with anyone because they're like, oh, Caroline is 38. This is it. So I'm having a little bit of resentment about the Devo where it's like, hey, you have to be 22 years old to get a ride. And I'm like, well, I've been on the circuit longer than those kids have been alive and it's still there. So I want to show that people can be welcome and it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your discipline. And we all love the sport of cycling. And my recap is like age shouldn't be a limitation. Just be your own limitation and do whatever you want and then learn about what you can do, not do, and then make your own choices. Don't tell that was one of my rule in cycling. I was like, I want to retire when I'm ready to retire. I don't want to be pushed because I don't have a contract or I'm being told I should retire. So I think that that's not going to be easy for sure, but that was one of my main goals for the last 20 years. And I hope everybody kind of gets something out of it and do what you want to do. Nobody should tell you what you have to do and can't do.
Yeah, completely agree. And what's interesting just to like observe you and kind of where you're at in the sport right now is like you're at this intersection where you're feeling some of the age stuff because it's real. Like, you know, it the performance will go down due to age, but I've done podcasts too about all this with Joe Friel and others about how we can mitigate the loss, right, over time by staying active, doing good training, getting good sleep, and all this kind of stuff. However, with you, Caroline, it's like you're also at this point where you want to give back, and due to some other like calculations and some other jobs and this kind of stuff, it's like you're giving back and still racing at the same time. I'd say based on seeing you race and also looking at your results so far this year, it's like if you actually wanted to, and if you had the support, you could take away some of those other job duties, not make as much money, right? But then that would go into the risk calculation and you'd still be at the top of your game. Not as much as some of the years in the past, but like it's still there. So on that trajectory is like you're at this awesome intersection right now where you are giving back. You still have the performance. You're walking the walk, talking the talk. It's super fun to see. And I think it's also inspiring to a lot of our athletes who are out there, a lot of athletes who are listening to be like, you know what? I can do this. And this, elite athlete who's gone through some shit just like me, you know what? She's out there doing, I'm going to do it even though I'm 40 or whatever the case is. So it's pretty cool to see. And I just want to mention that.
I appreciate it. Well, I hope I inspire people. It's like, hey, that we joke about the team and it's like, hey, you have to be master to be part of it. But that's pretty much it. If you're over 33, you can be part of my team. Under 33, you can't. Too young. But you learn so much. I mean, the thing is, I wish I had that maturity of like knowledge and all the things I've learned and then still I still have power. And yeah, sometimes I'm amazed that I'm still like up front at the race because I don't have time to train, but at the same time I train for so long that I still have, memories and I optimize. It's all about you optimize. Like when you get older and you have responsibility, job, kids, whatever is going on, and it's what I tell my athletes all the time is like, hey, there's no way you're going to be fully compliant to your training because life gets in the way and then we just have to adapt. And there's time in life where it's like, oh, I don't have the energy or there's things going on and whatever. So, but you learn to be better adapting and then optimize your time and also like smarter. Like I know there's things I can't do anymore. Like, I lose a lot of my punch. So it's like I have to work on that because it's just natural. Your body is not reacting the same way. I used to do like 2 days of intervals back and back, and I told my coach, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need a day between. So I'm also learning so much as a coach to be like, okay, I'm coaching people who are 65. I can't just think about, hey, this is how we do things, and the body's changing. Everything is changing in life and you just have to adapt. The only way you can survive in life is adapting anyway, and that's what we do.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So how, like at this point, at age 38,
I'm 37 and a half and 3/4 or something like that.
Racing age is 38.
Yeah, you're right. God damn it.
So how do you redefine success right now for yourself? Like your athlete self, your coaching self, your professional self, you can kind of go with it whatever direction. It's probably multifaceted as well. So how do you redefine success for you?
Yeah, so like success is different. Like back in the day, we'd be like, oh, I have to win these races and I have to be, top 10 at the ranking. I'm like, oh, damn, I'm 52 at the ranking going backwards. I joke about it, but it's like, oh, it's like it takes a moment to digest. Like I think you saw my post a couple weeks ago and I finished and I just started crying, like emotional crying, not a bad crying, but be like, wow, this is not what it used to be. I had to go so hard to get close to that podium in a good way, but it's like I kind of lost a part of me and I had to like, okay, this is the new me. This is what's going to happen. So now satisfaction is like, okay, I pushed myself as hard as possible. I was close to like podium with all those international ladies and I'm not like fighting to go to Europe and win national. And sometimes I have to remind myself because it's real easy to fall back and like, oh, this is what I used to do. This is who I used to be. and you're like, all done. This is not a reality. Check the box of like, hey, I have to go to work on Monday and all this thing. So sometimes it hits you like, oh no, this is not what I do anymore. Coaching is also like great. That I love the mentorship aspect. So it's like if anyone who needs advice or wants to like, learn anything, I'm always so happy if someone is like, hey, what do you think of this? The tire choice, or like line in the course and that project I'm launching, hanging out with people who are new to the sport, getting the support, seeing athletes like one of my athletes who is in her 50s, and then she did her first gravel race and now she's all hooked up and she's having a blast. Like things like that just give me other satisfaction. And yes, I do like to win still. And I will try to win this year. But if I don't, that's okay too. Like 5 years ago, like, if I don't win, if I'm not on a podium, that's not acceptable. And I was on a podium every single time, but I am not as hurt. And my ego is a little less big than it used to be. Let's put it that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, as an elite athlete, that ego has to be robust at times to handle everything that goes on with the wins, losses, the criticisms, and what we do over time. But I think too, as we age, that fulfillment in the sport changes, right? Because the ability declines a little bit. That punch is usually the thing that goes first. We're slower on hill climbs. We're covering our normal routes less miles per hour than we used to, and I would say, to my younger athletes, I don't go there with them all the time, but I do tell them. In fact, I just had a conversation with one of my U23s, and I said, you're not going to be an elite athlete your whole life. And I go, hopefully the stuff that we learn through bike racing, the wins and losses, the ups and downs, hopefully we learn how to translate that to life. Hopefully we learn how to work in the high performance environment and bring that to business. So I plant those seeds along the way.
That's really smart. And I think I have to say cycling, and like, it doesn't matter if it's cycling and competing, but that all the value that we learn in the sport, that's helping me now with my job. Like, so I also take things out of like, that work ethic and then consistency and all the things that you have to do when you're training, because it's like consistency is the key pretty much. It's like, if you can take all those values that you learn into like being an athlete, it doesn't matter what level, because at the end, it's the same concept. If you race, there's maybe a little more sacrifice if you want to be top podium at the World Cup, or if you want to be, top 3 at a master race, whatever. There's different level, but at the same time, the values are there. If you can take those and take it to work and take it to life and how you can interact with people, I think it's just helps you to be a better human. And hopefully sports is teaching a lot of younger kids how to like survive in life, because life is hard anyway. It doesn't get any better. You know, when people are like, it gets better, I'm like, no, sorry, but bullshit. Excuse my French. But it's like, this is not true. You're just more equipped to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's just like you get better at dealing with all the crap, because like 10 years ago, you're like, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
And you've gone through so much that you're just like, whatever. This is nothing. It's a piece of cake. So we just learn.
Yeah. The human algorithm improves, hopefully, over time.
Yeah. I hope so. Otherwise, we're failing. I mean, a lot of people don't, unfortunately, but hopefully we're on the case where we're getting better.
Yeah. In athletes, I think that's just it. It's like people who are driven to athleticism and competing, they're attracted to that. And so to my age groupers and my master's athletes, it's also a similar message where I do tell them, you can be an athlete your whole life. I mean, that's what's cool about the sport is you can start doing it at age 6 and you can keep on doing it till 106. It's just like the participation and the level that changes. And by the way, success is not linear in this game. It's ziggy and zaggy. It's up and down.
And success is like, how do you like everybody you can like be last at a bike race and that still can be a success. There's no like, it's not because you're not on the podium and you're not winning that it's not a success. And that's where it's crucial for people to know that not everybody can win it, and thank God. But it's like, have your own success, like measure your
Yeah.
own success. If finishing in the same lap is a success, or doing this race and you never done, it doesn't matter what it is. Have pride and just be proud of yourself. And this,
Yeah.
just own your own success. Don't tell anyone, like nobody should tell you, hey, that was not a success. You're the only judge anyway.
Yeah, and we're our own worst judge, I think, in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, and especially to that point, when I find myself with Leadville, for example, a lot of masters and age groupers come to me for that. I almost take it like a 2-year approach, where it's like, okay, let's just do the first one to get through it, because they come with all these performance goals and things like this. I'm like, let's just do the first one, get through it. Second one, if you still want to do it again and go for the big belt buckle, now we can start to develop, craft that performance goal. And, you know, again, kind of swinging back to the masters athlete, is we take that same thing from elite athletics and development and we translate it to the masters athlete. It still applies, but I tell them, instead of you won't be an elite athlete forever, I tell them your peak form won't last forever. And for the master athlete, it zigs and zags more about like family and work demands rather than like the age decay or the team contract or something like that. But even more so for that master's athletes, like stay consistent, just like you said before, Caroline, is because when the busy life becomes less busy, we can pick it back up more quickly. Like the fitness doesn't decay as much and we can kick it back up. And I think that's really important for anybody who's going through some shit in life, whether it is just like busy family, busy work, or my life is melting down. Try to stay consistent with that sport because it will help get you through. And by the time you can pick it back up, you'll be more fit and it'll speed back up.
Plus, it's way harder when you stop for so long. Every year, I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna take a little break, and I always regret it. So I think it's like, don't stop too long, because never gonna get back out.
exactly. 2 weeks off and quit. That's what we always say.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason that's a joke for everybody out there, it's like you take a week off, it's healthy. You start riding again the second week, and then you start to rekindle, and that's a good recovery process. If you take 2 weeks off, the little voice in your head starts to be like, do I need to really keep doing this?
I have
Should I
a
restart?
so I remember, you're gonna laugh, but Katie Compton,
Yeah.
years back in the day,
Yep.
years ago, she's like, Caroline, if you take one day off, to multiply by three. And I was like, hold on, I just took 3 weeks off. That means I'm gonna have that many weeks before I get back to where I was. She's like, yeah. And I was like, damn, killed me, Katie. So I'm traumatized from it, but still.
Yeah. Katie's a hell of a bike racer, and yeah, the elite athletics have that mentality. But
I don't know. I'm good off the couch too. I mean, it's a lot of people. A lot of people think that the athletes are not lazy, but I'm like, I can be a good lazy person too.
yeah,
I would love a couch day right now.
you
I'd
should
kill for a couch day.
you should take a couch day. You should just, I mean, hang on the couch right now. We can pause this episode and just you can go lay on the couch and we can
It's
resume.
close. It's right here.
You make a good point there because that also plays into how priorities shift with reality. The fact that you've been racing something since age 6, and the fact that you've been racing your bicycle since age 15. I've been training and racing myself for like 20 years, and I do pretty good at low CTLs. I do pretty good with a week or two off. I just do a couple hard efforts. That heart rate's jacked, and my perceived effort's higher, but I can still be as good as I once was for a day.
Well, I tell you that secret, but all my athletes have bigger numbers on Training Peaks
For
than
sure.
me.
But
So
the reason I bring it up is not to toot our own horns here. It is the reality of what I would say is the real chronic adaptation to endurance sport, not just chronic training load. But if you've been doing this for a long time, you can take 2 weeks off and not have to quit. You can take 2 weeks off and become pretty darn fresh because your other life stresses and stuff are so high. It's like you just need to do less. But all the training that you've been doing for years and years and years, and for those athletes who I mentioned listening to this podcast that have been doing it for years and years and years, you probably don't have to do high hours all the time. You can take it down for a month or two or a season, come back, and you're not going to lose much because of that chronic adaptation.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's kind of I had Lauren last year was like, we had the same coach. She's like, what the hell? You're training way less than I am and you still beat me. And I was like, well, I have, and then Jim was trying to tell her, is like, Caroline has 20 years of,
Right.
you accumulate all those hours in training. I also never been, to be fully transparent, I never been someone who overtrained. I like the competitive aspect more than the training. I'm not, some people, there's
Hmm.
two different type of athlete. There's the one who love the training parts and
Hmm.
they also love racing. I would put a number on my back every day over training. So there's two different type of athletes, and I
Yeah.
think it's important to like determine who you are and what you do. And also, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into cycling to learn how to just love cycling. I just went full gas. So my
Yeah.
first year, like 6 months later, I'm already part of the French team racing like World Cup and European Championships. So now I'm like discovering how to love bikes, like going for a coffee ride with my friends and then loving cycling, but just itself without, hey, I'm
Yeah.
putting a number in my back and I'm just gonna taste the blood in my mouth every weekend. So different approach, but yeah, consistency, and then you can be a little more lazy later on because you've done all those things, and it just never goes away completely. Yes, it takes a little bit of time to get back to it, but also you have that maturity and knowledge, and you know how to rectify. I always say, okay, I'm gonna rectify the situation. We have 3 weeks, and it's like boom, let's do it. When you're younger, it takes months for you to be at the level you want to be. When you get older, then you have that knowledge and you know what to do and what your body reacts to. And then usually that works pretty well. I mean, it may stop at some point, but so far
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. One of my final points here to bring out, and you just mentioned it, is the all or nothing mentality. And I see that in elite sport. I see that in high performers, away from any, athletic sort of competition, but it's the CEOs, the doctors, the ER nurses, these people who have this high performance mentality. And all or nothing, it's not the healthiest mindset, especially when you apply it to everything in life. I think that there's a time and place for it, especially when you need performance. That's fine. But in this story that we're kind of talking about, your story and a lot of other people's stories, where it's okay to go for a coffee ride. You don't need to pin up and race it.
Moderation is what you learn. Because the thing is, yes, I the all in and out is destroying you in some ways. And I
That's it.
think like if I could go back, I would find a little more moderation in my life because
Mm-hmm.
showing up, 3 weeks before national, going to see my friend and say, hey, we have to lose 3 kilo because I need to win national. And I just wasn't consistent enough. Like that extremity, like being extreme that way, I pay the price now. Like
Mm-hmm.
physically, my body is not handling things. So what I could say is like to circle back to the younger generation, be a little more moderate. Like be consistent, but don't be. The moderation could be a good way to stay in a sport too. I think I'm
Yeah.
one of the exception where it's like, okay, I went full gas, I went through the and stay in a sport for that long. But if you want to stay for that long, I think including a little bit of moderation is the key so you don't get completely burnt.
Yeah, that's it. Because I mentioned before, it's a lifelong sport. And that's what's so unique, I think, about cycling in this culture is we can get into it. We just start learning with training wheels. We can race up to the elite level and you can keep on doing it, have coffee rides until the sun sets, right?
It's a sport where the age is like, no, I mean, at some point with my athlete, I had a 14 years old to 76 years old. So that tells you like how
That's
long
cool.
of a road you have. So I think like anyone who's scared about whatever age they are, they shouldn't be.
Caroline, final question to you. What brings you joy from a bicycle? Like one thing, two things, name as many things as you want. What still brings you joy when you think about riding your bike?
I like I mean, it's kind of hard to, there's a lot of things, but exploring, it's like there's a lot of things you can't explore. You can't drive in a lot of places. You can explore so much on the bike and then see things that you wouldn't see. And then on the racing aspect, I like to be able to escape. Like, I always joke and say,
Mhm.
well, I mean, this is the only time my brain shut up for 50 minutes. That's what I
Yeah.
love about racing, because I'm like in my bubble and it's like me, just me in this entire world, because it's like the world stopped for like 50 minutes and I get to do what I love for 50 minutes, hopefully, if I'm not too behind the leaders, and just have a good time and do what I love and still, travel to places, meet awesome people. There's such a good community that I don't see myself getting out of it. Sometimes I was like, hey, I want to be done. I don't want to work in the industry, and I'm full on in. So I just love the sport, period. And sometimes hate it too, but mostly love it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here 20 years later.
Yeah. Well, there's always that to every aspect of life. And so, yeah, I think that redefining journey that you're on, the redefining journey that I think many people are on, it's not easy, but I do think with sharing our stories, sharing our wins and our losses and how we did it, it's really applicable and really helpful for all of us kind of like going through it together. We're talking about it in the lens of an athlete. And I think so many people who are athletes can resonate with that. And we can use some of those like the athlete things to push through when we can. We learn some of the human things where we just need to kind of sit still and let it be for a while, even though our athlete self really hates doing that. But hopefully with Caroline's story and the stuff that she shared, hopefully it inspires a lot of people. So Caroline, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you for taking time out of your non-recovery lifestyle right now,
Yeah,
which is very
take time to
busy.
go to work. But my recap was like, hey, sometime guys, just feel it. Whatever you have to
Yeah.
feel. I had a therapist telling me once, just feel it. It's okay to feel
Yep.
whatever it is. So
It's
thank you so
super
much
okay
for
to
having
feel.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, for sure, Caroline. It's super okay to feel. I think that's a good way to end it. But I do want to say, you mentioned coaching. You mentioned you might be able to take on an athlete or two. If people want to connect with you, either through the race support, like you mentioned, or coaching, or they just want more of the French firecracker that is within you, how do people find you?
Pretty simple. I mean, these days you can't hide anyway. Instagram, you can find me. Facebook, you can find me. You could probably find my phone number somewhere. 2 blocks away from the CTS office. I can't hide. I will be
Perfect.
at every single races in cross. So if you have any question, if you want to stop by, please. I have drinks. We have good attitude, and would love to have you around.
I can attest to that. I would say definitely follow her on Instagram. Her lifelong journey. She's hilarious, folks. Like, she's literally one of the funnier people I've met on the bike racing scene of things. So go there for the entertainment, but also the unfiltered rawness of Caroline Manning racing her bike and doing life. So Caroline, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam. Bye, guys.